You travel to an amazing place, the landscape is just breathtaking. The only thing you need is the right light. But the weather god hates you. There's clear sky nearly every day and you see no possibility at all to get a really strong photo. And also if he doesn't look after that, when we look at photos like this here, but this is exactly what happened to me this year when I was to the Dolomites. But I anyway managed to get some of the best images I've ever taken in my whole life. So in this video I'm going to tell you what you can do to get out the best of the weather all the time. How can we outwit the weather god? Everything like that in this video. Hi my friends, very nice to see you. I'm really happy with all the photos I got in the Dolomites this year. For every single photo I've planned, I got even a portfolio shot. And this, although the weather was a nightmare to be honest, but when we look at the photos, I got quite dramatic weather conditions and light. I got exactly that weather I've planned for my photos. So how is this possible? Well, generally there are two different ways to get the perfect weather conditions, and both of them work fantastically for me. I used one of them in the Dolomites for a reason and it worked great. But there is even a better way, which I use most of the time, so get sure to watch this video to the end. Now, what I didn't tell you concerning my Dolomites trip is, before I traveled to the Dolomites, I observed the weather maps, and multiple weeks before I traveled there, it was extremely dry in that area. Clear sunshine every day, no rain, and so also nearly no clouds obviously. But the Dolomites are dramatic. I needed dramatic weather to support the mood I wanted to convey with my image. So after waiting for some weeks, there came 1 week, and I posted it on my Twitter, there came 1 week with just thunderstorms, really just thunderstorms. You know, thunderstorms are high up in the mountains, can get really dangerous, so it's not a good idea to go there in such a case. And so what I thought is, as soon as the thunderstorms would be over, I would travel to Tresime, my first spot I visited in the Dolomites. Because, you know, after a phase of thunderstorms and rain, the chance is quite high to get a higher humidity, to get atmospheric conditions, which leads to dramatic skies for epic photographs. I waited for weeks to get these conditions at Tresime. And really, as I arrived there in the end, I got amazing light already at noon, where I got some shots I'm really happy about. But I'm even more than happy with the sunset shot I got on that same first day. Really, I got goosebumps when I was taking it, and I get still goosebumps I think when I just think about it. So I managed to get the right weather by waiting at home. And this is tip number 1, by the way, wait till the weather is great. I often hear photographers saying we can't change the weather. We can. I mean, not immediately of course, but maybe the wished weather will come tomorrow, next week, the week after, whatever. Time will change the weather. And this works really fantastic, but when you travel, it gets difficult because we don't have all the time in the world. I can't wait for 2 or 3 weeks at a place for just one photo when I don't have time for traveling that long. So what I did in the Dolomites is I picked out the most important places, the most important locations for me, and in my case this was Tresime, Passo Ciao and Alpe-d'Huez. I always pronounce this wrong. However, what I did is, instead of planning to visit 15 different locations in the Dolomites, I focused just on these 3. I thought already about my options for wreath compositions before I even traveled there. This allowed me to be quite fast with finding a really strong composition. I mean quite fast, this means within a day. Fast is a quite stretchable term. However, it was all about saving time for me to be able to use the weather I have predicted immediately when I'm there. Now, the really important thing was, when I was finished with one location, I didn't travel to the next one immediately. I drove with my camper van to a campsite instead. There I organized fresh water in tank, I emptied my grey and black water tank, I washed clothes, or my wife did this actually. I worked for my company on my laptop, I processed images, and most importantly, I observed the weather maps every day to find out when is the best day to visit my next spot. So I often spent 4 or 5 days at a campsite and I just waited. I mean, I worked there, but yeah, I didn't, I waited for photography, obviously. I want to be honest with you, my camper van was a massive advantage here, because I stayed so flexible compared with booking a room. I mean, I can go wherever I want, whenever I want, so I can really recommend, if you don't have one already, look for any kind of camper van. It doesn't need to be a finished one like I have. It is much cheaper to build your own one if you have the time therefore, which was not the case for me, unfortunately. So in the Dolomites, I waited at a campsite between my photo tours. I mean, I also went for little walks and hikes there, and I also looked, I also took some shots. But yeah, again, the weather was not great there, and this was not more than scouting shots. And I also stayed longer at all the photo locations itself to explore them in detail for my photography in future. And that's quite important for me. And these waiting phases is how I managed to get portfolio shots with dramatic skies during a period of dryness in the Dolomites. And it was really dry, no clouds most of the time, or at least not dramatic ones, as you would expect to get in high alpine areas. So I'm really happy about all the photos I got, but there's even a better way to get perfect weather conditions for your photos. But before I will tell you more about that, my friends, if you like this video, please consider to give me a thumb up. You know, it helps me, it helps the algorithm, and it helps also other photographers out there to find this video better on YouTube. Thank you therefore. Well, although I got the image I'm more than happy about during a period of dryness, there's even a better way, which I use most of the time. What I usually do is, and there's a reason why I didn't do this in the Dolomites, by the way, what I usually do is I start my planning with the weather. So this means when I want to go out for photography tomorrow, I just check the weather maps, which I do every day, by the way, also to find out how the weather develops. And then I just think which kind of photography, which kind of compositions would fit to the weather, which is given, by the weather god, obviously. You know, we can't change the weather on a specific day, that's impossible. But what we can change is our photography on a specific day, according to the weather. The only problem here is weather predictions are never a 100% thing. And this is why I do a little trick here. I consider different weather scenarios, and this is not possible with common weather apps, to be honest. They give you always just one version of the weather forecast. But with weather maps instead, I see how the weather is predicted around an area, and I also see more weather data so that I can estimate how high is the chance to get weather scenario A, how high is the chance to get scenario B, C, D, and so on. Yeah, usually there are not more than 3 or maybe 4 different weather scenarios to be considered, with some exceptions of course. For the case that you shouldn't know how to read weather maps, I made already a video about that. I will link it up there for you. And with this procedure, I'm usually always prepared for the weather, and I get photos with the right weather conditions. Usually, I mean, there are exceptions of course, but really most of the time it works for me. But there is a reason why I didn't use that when I was traveling to the Dolomites this year. In the Dolomites, I decided for the first way I mentioned before, I decided to wait. And the reason why I decided to wait is simply I wanted my image to convey dramatic mood. I didn't travel to the Dolomites just to get any photographs, I wanted to get dramatic ones. And in this case, if this is the requirement, to get very specific weather conditions, a very special weather, the only way to achieve that is by waiting. So ultimately, it depends on your aim if you decide for way 1, to wait for the weather, or way 2, to adapt your photography to the weather. There is no right or wrong, both ways work fantastically, it is totally up to you, whatever you need for your art. The second way is also great, by the way, if you don't have much time for photography. What happens from time to time also for me, to be honest. Let me give you a quick example. This spring there was a week where I was so busy, but I checked the weather maps, what I do really every day, and and it also takes me just a few minutes because I'm really used to that. And I saw that there are really high chances to get a very special weather phenomenon, red sky. So I picked out a photo spot from my bucket list, I drove there next morning, I took the shot, and I was early enough at an appointment with my client at 9 AM. I even vlogged on that day and I explained how I predicted the weather phenomenon. So if you're interested about that, how I planned my red sky shooting, how I got a really powerful image, although yeah, it didn't have all too much time therefore, watch this video here. And friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. If yes, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to tune in next week. There will come a fantastic video as well. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.